These are the top stories. Managing the surge in asylum seekers at unauthorized border crossings is set to cost Ottawa more than $1 billion. The federal government is on pace to spend 8 figures over 3 years, according to a report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. The average cost for each migrant who entered Canada between border crossings, nearly $38,000 since January of 2017, is $14,321 for the entire refugee claim process, and the figure is predicted to rise to $16,666 as waiting times in the system get longer. Ottawa spent an estimated $340.2 million last year, $367.8 million in the current fiscal year, and a projection of $395.9 million in 2019-20. The PBO figures don't factor in the costs for provinces. Ontario has said it has spent $200 million to provide assistance on housing and other areas. John Ibbotson writes, "The problem of people crossing the Canada-US border illegally and then seeking asylum just became a bigger headache for the Liberals, one they emphatically do not need less than a year before the next election." This is the Daily Morning Update newsletter. If you're reading this on the web, or it was forwarded to you from someone else, you can sign up for Morning Update and all Globe newsletters here. BC is joining Alberta with a vow to impose cleanup timelines on oil and gas wells. The BC Oil and Gas Commission says companies will no longer be able to put off cleanup indefinitely as it responds to a Globe investigation that detailed the environmental and financial risks of inactive wells. Saskatchewan said it would study the prospect of imposing timelines. The process of restoring the landscape to its pre-drilling state can unearth contamination of soil and water and potentially require expensive monitoring and remediation work. Companies have been increasingly putting off the expense, with the number of inactive sites now totaling 122,456 across BC, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Ontario has named veteran police commander Ron Taverner as the new head of the OPP. Taverner will be in charge of Canada's second largest police force after the RCMP. Taverner became the unit commander of Toronto's 23 Division in Etobicoke in the early 2000s. Coinciding with the Premier and his brother Rob's rise to power in the 2000s and 2010s. The Fords found a common cause on their law and order crime agenda with Taverner, who through this time was locked in a chronic battle with guns and gangs at 23 Division. Alok Mukherjee, the former long-serving chair of the Toronto Police Services Board, said despite Taverner's connections to the Fords, he'll have to maintain independence in his new role. Ron Taverner has been very close to the Ford family. He and the Premier have had a close relationship. Ottawa is sending senior officials to Cuba as the number of Canadians with brain injuries reaches 13. The federal government says all options are on the table as it probes the mysterious Havana syndrome injuries of Canadian diplomats and family members. Ottawa isn't ruling out withdrawing all staff or shutting down the embassy in Havana. Officials also revealed that the number of those affected has increased from 12 to 13, the latest a career diplomat who began reporting symptoms including dizziness and nosebleeds this summer. Despite study from researchers, police and intelligence agencies, no explanation of motive has been found for the attacks. A group of diplomats told the Globe that Ottawa has broken promises to have them all tested and diagnosed in specialized programs. Hate crimes surged in Canada by 47% last year. The number of police-reported hate crimes totaled 2,073 in 2017, the highest level since Statistics Canada began collecting this type of data in 2009. Ontario saw crimes targeting Muslims soar 207%, while Quebec saw those numbers peak in February of 2017, the month after the mosque shooting in the province's capital. This is staggering. "You don't see this kind of increase in any sort of crime data," said Barbara Perry, an expert on hate crimes and professor of criminology at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. "It's an assault on our core values of inclusion and equity." Got a news tip that you'd like us to look into? Email us at tips@globeandmail.com. Need to share documents securely? Reach out via Secure Drop. In case you missed it, Canada slapped sanctions on 17 Saudis linked to Jamal Khashoggi's killing. The measures, 2 weeks after the US imposed comparable sanctions, are the first concrete steps Canada has taken in response to the murder of the dissident journalist. But the federal government continues to leave existing arms sales to the Saudis untouched, and it also hasn't directly criticized Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Crown Prince, who is making a return to the spotlight with an appearance at the G20 summit in Argentina today, is said to have been identified by the CIA as being responsible for Khashoggi's murder. Morning markets sour oil toiled at a more than 1-year low after its worst month in a decade on Friday. While most major markets were keeping moves tight ahead of the weekend meeting between US and Chinese Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Tokyo's Nikkei gained 0.4%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng 0.2%, and the Shanghai Composite 0.8%. In Europe, London's FTSE 100, Germany's DAX and the Paris CAC 40 were down by between 0.5 and 0.7% by about 6:10 a.m. ET. New York futures were also down. The Canadian dollar was just above 75 US cents. What everyone's talking about: no carbon taxes in Ontario's new climate plan, but you're still going to pay. The PCs have taken the previous government's carbon plan, removed what was best and amped up what was worst. The best part, a carbon price that left it up to the market to figure out how to lower emissions, is gone. The worst part, a lot of government meddling and business, combined with taxpayer funds for polluters and green initiatives, remains. You can only call this progress if you're looking at it upside down. The pre-Ford PCs were planning to do the exact opposite. Until less than a year ago, Ontario PCs were promising to keep carbon pricing while getting rid of the slush fund aspects of it, by returning 100% of money to consumers in the form of lower income taxes. That plan is now, ironically, the Trudeau government's plan. The Ontario scheme unveiled by Environment Minister Rod Phillips looks nothing like that. But it does lean heavily on the accomplishments of those bad old Liberals. Globe editorial labeled from Deep Blue, "Why Human Chess Survives, in the Face of AI." With so much angst about artificial intelligence and the future of work, the recent World Chess Championship at London's Chess Classic offers some hope. It is not that mankind has turned the tables on the march of progress. Rather, what is remarkable is what a creative and ultimately human match it was between reigning champion Magnus Carlsen of Norway, the 27-year-old Mozart of chess, and 26-year-old challenger Fabiano Caruana of the United States, a major talent in his own right. At one time, it did seem that computers would sound the death knell for chess, not to mention all human mind games. That was certainly my guess in the late 1970s, when the rise of computers was one of the main reasons I gave for retiring from competitive chess. Kenneth Rogoff, professor of economics and public policy at Harvard University. Living Better, 2 new films worth seeing. Barry Hertz makes a perfect 4-star case for Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, a drama focusing on one upper-middle-class family and the domestic servant who waits on them. Hertz writes, "The words sublime and dazzling and brilliant fail to match just how tremendous a work Roma is." It opens in some theaters this weekend, and streams on Netflix starting December 14th. For subscribers, "Nothing Like a Dame," writes Auntie Donahue, offers the precious illusion that we are close enough with 4 pillars of English theatre, Eileen Atkins, Judi Dench, Joan Plowright and Maggie Smith, that they're chatting to us about their memories and feelings, that we get to see them as people and as friends. That if we asked politely, we'd also be poured a glass of lemon water or champagne, or at least be privy to one of Smith's one-liners. 3.5 stars, for subscribers, Moment in Time. Exxon Mobil merge in record $81 billion deal. November 30, 1999, the merger of Exxon Corporation and Mobil Corporation marked a partial joining together of what U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt's trustbusters had torn asunder 88 years earlier. Exxon was the largest of the 7 descendants of John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, which dominated oil production, refining and marketing in the United States in the late 19th and early 20th century. Roosevelt used the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up Standard Oil in 1911. Standard Oil of New Jersey took 50% of the assets and became Exxon Corporation, while Standard Oil of New York morphed into Mobil Oil Corporation in the late 1990s. Global oil prices slumped badly, hitting a low of $9.39 a barrel in December 1998. The resulting low share prices meant companies could purchase oil production more cheaply than drilling for it, and sparked a spate of mergers. Exxon essentially acquired Mobil in a deal worth $81 billion, then the largest corporate deal in history. Then Exxon chairman Lee Raymond defended the merger as a necessary step to keep the leading U.S. oil company competitive with giant state-owned or state-backed firms in OPEC and Russia, a far cry from the time when Standard Oil operated virtually without rivals. Sean McCarthy. If you'd like to receive this newsletter by email every weekday morning, go here to sign up. If you have any feedback, send us a note.